What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Muscle Science with myself, IBU Pro John De La Rosa,
and Dustin Elliott, product formulator for Betancourt Nutrition.
So we're here again to bring you guys some really important news and products that we feel are going to help you in your training and in your pursuit of a better physique, a healthier lifestyle. So we'll let Dustin kick it off and let you know what today's episode is all about.
Yeah, so today I wanted to talk about a few major categories, and what I wanted to do was drawing on John's experience. We wanted to talk about joint pain, nitric oxide, stimulants, the things that you guys all use on a regular basis. And John, as a bodybuilder, you know, his profession, his sport is the incubator for the latest science when it comes to ingredients and bodybuilding techniques. So you would be the perfect person to talk to about this. And it's not going to be about necessarily, you know, if there are any products that we come across, we'll discuss it. But this is going to be about the ingredients as well that are best for some of these categories. But, you know, just to start off, for example, I wanted to talk about nitric oxide.
Okay.
But what I want to do is I want to get your thoughts on the muscular pump, what it means to bodybuilding, and maybe any supplements that you use for the pump.
Right. So in my experience and all my years of in being in the gym and training for a bodybuilding competition, or again just to make my physique better, getting a pump in the gym has been, you know, essential in what I'm trying to do. Getting a good pump in the gym means you're going to be breaking down more muscle tissue and creating more room for more muscle growth and so on and so forth. But one of the key factors in doing that and getting a good pump is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide allows for more blood flow and more nutrients into the muscle tissue. But like I said, if you're not getting a good pump, you're not going to be able to get the best results. So nitric oxide has been really important in my training.
Okay, great. And so for you guys that aren't sure what nitric oxide is, I'm sure you've seen it advertised on the labels of all these products that are out there. Nitric oxide is actually a gas. It dilates the blood vessels, and you have blood that flows into the muscle. Now, this happens during muscular contractions. Why is it that you can run and maybe not necessarily get a pump right away when you're jogging versus when you're lifting heavy? Well, it's because the blood isn't flowing back out of the muscle. You're essentially filling the muscles with blood. So that's what John is talking about when he's talking about nutrient delivery through the muscles. You're actually forcing more blood into your muscles as you exercise. So, you know, with that being said, are there any ingredients in particular that you feel help you to get a pump during exercise?
Yeah, I mean, carbohydrates are really important. I think you need to have sodium in there as well.
Okay.
And obviously the nitric oxide, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to touch on for you guys is when it comes to single ingredients, or what it is you should be looking for that induces a muscular pump. In the past, what was popular was arginine. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that at this point. It's pretty popular. Arginine is naturally occurring in your body. It's one of the main amino acids your body uses to produce nitric oxide, which is why it's popular as a supplement. There are a lot of studies that contradict its effectiveness. So in some instances in which it's been shown to work, there are other instances in research where arginine was used in a high dosage. But with arginine, when you take a single ingredient that your body already produces, typically there's a system in your body that's responsible for breaking it down. So what they're finding is more effective nowadays, which I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with, but you're probably not sure why it works, but it's citrulline. Citrulline is a precursor to arginine. And what we're finding in the ingredients world nowadays is that the precursors to amino acids that are occurring in our body are actually more effective than taking that ingredient itself. So for example, creatine monohydrate, why does that work? Because it produces more ATP. You don't take ATP for ATP, you take creatine monohydrate. In our carnitine plus, we have gamma-butyrobetane. It's a precursor for carnitine. So when you take it, you're sweating off your rocker, as opposed to just taking the carnitine by itself, which a lot of research studies have shown taking carnitine standalone isn't very effective. Taking things like acetyl L-carnitine, L-carnitine L-tartrate, these other forms of L-carnitine which are more bioavailable, tend to be more effective than the ingredient itself. So that's the reason why citrulline is so effective. But we have a new kid on the block, another one is called agmatine sulfate. There are a lot of studies, or I should say not a lot of studies, but there are a lot of people that say that based on the research that's out there, it doesn't necessarily show that agmatine sulfate induces nitric oxide.
Right.
And so that's understandable. What it is the byproduct of arginine. But what agmatine sulfate does is that it produces and blocks nitric oxide synthase, which is responsible for breaking down excess nitric oxide in the body. So we can get a pump on our own ourselves. You said it yourself. You can get a pump, carbohydrates, sodium, proper exercise technique, the rep ranges. These are all things that induce a pump. Mm-hmm. So you don't necessarily need to take an ingredient from nitric oxide. We're talking about ways to support it.
Right.
And contrary to what some people say when they say, oh, there's nothing in research that says agmatine causes a pump, what is true is that when you have something that blocks nitric oxide synthase and you induce a pump on your own, you're essentially supporting that pump and you'll be able to hold it for longer and it'll stay stronger. So that's the way the agmatine sulfate works, and that's the reason why those are more effective than arginine nowadays.
So I just started to experience exactly what we're talking about here with Dustin. Just recently I started to incorporate citrulline agmatine into my pre-workout, and I can say through my own experiences that my pumps are just a little bit better. I think with the amount of food and against sodium and proper training, it could be marginal, but again, anything a little bit that's going to help me be better and perform better, I'm going to try it, and I think it's been working pretty well.
Yeah, an ingredient like citrulline has been shown to boost muscular endurance because of the increase in blood flow. An ingredient like agmatine isn't going to help you get a pump better per se, but it'll probably help you to hold that pump for longer.
Right.
Is probably what's it's most notable for.
Mm-hmm.
So skipping on to the next category, we want to talk to you about stimulants. I know you're kind of off and on about that. I remember one time we spoke before, you were more into black coffee. How are you feeling about stimulants now that you're in your off season?
So I was never a big fan of pre-workouts or anything like that would give me energy, mainly because I'm very sensitive to them. Just one of those things that it's a very individual thing. Some guys that I know go to the gym and they can load up on 2 or 3 scoops of a pre-workout, and they're bouncing off the walls, but a few hours later they're okay. Sometimes if I take a scoop of a pre-workout, I'll be up all night. So I'm just very sensitive to them, and I haven't really found one that allows me to get to bed on time and get some good rest and stuff. So until now, I've been weaning myself off of black coffee, and I've been actually trying the de-stunner that we make, which is a really, really good pre-workout as well. It reacts really well with me. I'm not, bugging out in the gym and bouncing off the walls and then I can't sleep at night. It allows me to get some sleep, but gives me just enough energy to get through my workout, keep me focused. So that's my experiences with pre-workouts, but again, everybody's different, and I urge you to go out and try and find one that works for you.
Yeah, so with the whole stimulants trend that's going on with caffeine, just so for those of you who know, you mentioned how your reaction is different.
Right.
What a lot of people miss when it comes to stimulants is that you don't take a stimulant and it just provides you with energy. It causes the release of adrenaline, noradrenaline, for example. And when it comes to adrenal levels, it can differ from person to person. You can have an adrenal dump, take a caffeinated product, be up for 30 minutes, and then just be completely out based on how much adrenaline is available.
Right.
You could be relying on stimulants all day and not feel a thing because your tolerance is high.
Right.
And there are all kinds of things that affect tolerance, what you eat it with, what supplements you're taking. The majority of Americans who eat a lot of red meat and it's backed up in their digestive system.
That's me.
Typically, you can go one way or the other. If you've never had stimulants, you'll be very sensitive to it.
Right.
If you have stimulants all the time and your digestive health isn't where it should be, then you'll probably have a very high tolerance because you're not absorbing it. What I wanted to get to in terms of stimulants is caffeine versus something new called theacrine. So caffeine, obviously, we all know and love. There's that habituation effect, right? We get used to it the more that we take it. What's great about theacrine is that it actually comes from a tea. It comes from the kucha tea plant is what it's called. Some of you have probably never heard of that, but this theacrine, it's chemically similar to caffeine. It's not as strong on a dose-by-dose basis. To get the equivalent amount of caffeine, you have to take more of it. Right. But what's great about it is that there's no habituation effect. You don't get used to it. You don't adjust to it.
Right.
So it's something that companies you'll see through brand name versions of the ingredient. They'll start combining with caffeine more often because your body won't get used to it or won't adjust to the stimulatory effect. And because it's chemically similar to caffeine, in a lot of ways it works similar to caffeine.
So are companies starting to combine the two, the caffeine and the theacrine?
Yeah, it's a brand new trend. Only a few products have come out with it so far, but that's the idea, is that you would combine the caffeine and the theacrine, whether it be like in a fat burner or a pre-workout.
Have you tried
That's a new
anything
trend.
like that?
I have, and it works very well. Actually, for people who aren't big coffee drinkers, the theacrine works by itself. The reason why you won't see it replace coffee anytime soon is because it absolutely tastes horrible and it's hard to flavor. So that's the reason why it hasn't broken the industry any faster.
Right.
But some of the companies that do own some of the research and the trademarks for it, they are working on alternatives to help flavor the item and package it differently. So that's a trend that you'll see more of. And that's a stimulant that's on the rise to watch out for.
Exciting to look out for.
Yeah. So I mean, speaking of stimulants, I'm sure everybody is aware of, and a lot of people have used the banned stuff that's out there, or soon to be banned. There's stuff that's teetering on the brink.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any experience with crazy stimulants in the past?
Oh yeah, and that's again why I've been turned off by a lot of the pre-workouts. Just sleepless nights, a lot of the shakes and sweats, and you just never feel right when you take something that's that high dose of whether it's caffeine or whatever stimulant they put in there. I remember back in the day when people were using what was inject 3D.
Oh, the DMA.
DMA, yeah. I mean, that stuff I couldn't go near it because it would really just not allow me to rest. I was bouncing off the walls for days. So I mean, I just stay away from really heavy stims like that.
Yeah, I mean that stuff is still around.
Yeah.
In some of the recent court cases that surrounded DMA,
it's making its way back, right?
It's it hasn't had the door closed on it entirely yet. So for those of you who aren't familiar or uncertain of the history behind it, there were some safety concerns that came out with DMA. And but for the amount of people that were using it and the amount of actual safety issues that they had, I mean, they had, I'm sure a lot of you guys are using it right now or know where to buy products that have it. There are a lot of people that on it, and the adverse reactions, it's not like every other person is having an adverse event with it, although it is a very strong stimulant. But what the issue surrounding it right now is, safety concerns aside, the NDI, New Dietary Ingredient Act that the FDA is moving forward with. It's a new structure as to how they're going to allow, or what ingredients they're going to allow in the industry. Yeah,
right. Okay.
They're new regulations. So basically, their thought process is that anything after 1996 or anything that's synthetic is a new dietary ingredient, and so it needs to be registered as such. And so with an ingredient like DMAA, it was around before '96. But it was a nasal decongestant product from the 1940s, believe it or not.
Wow.
And so it wasn't a legal dietary ingredient before '96. On top of that, you have a lot of companies trying to say that it's from geranium, it's naturally occurring, but it doesn't occur in nature at the, the potency that it's available in. So it's definitely synthetic. It's definitely not natural. And so kind of the controversy right now, and the reason why it's still kind of hanging in the balance is, a lot of the safety stuff, like I said, isn't completely conclusive. It's not like everybody who uses it is going to be harmed. Yeah, and then the other issue too is that on the one hand, it is related to something that's occurring in nature, but then on the other hand, it is synthetic, which the FDA doesn't allow. So it's going back and forth, but for the most part, what we're looking at right now in the industry is we don't have long-term safety evidence on it, right? Like people are using it, they're feeling super strong because of the stimulatory effect, the neurological benefits. But I know, like in your game, you're always looking at, like the long ball. You've always been taking care of yourself, and a lot of people who use these products, they don't know what the long-term effects are. So there are alternatives out there. I just wanted to mention a couple. One, for those of you out there, is alpha GPC. 600 milligrams per serving has been shown to increase power output and cognitive function in athletes. It's cholinergic compound is what it's called. And what this does is it's as opposed to choline, it's alpha glycerylphosphate choline. So this form of choline, it increases acetylcholine in your brain, which is responsible for the improvements in cognitive function.
Right.
And the absorption rate is much higher than regular choline. The other one to look at is CDP choline. That one also is great for memory, for attention. It doesn't have the same research for power output, so it's more of a focus ingredient, where alpha GPC is more of a pre-workout ingredient. So if you're looking for a good pre-workout, a lot of safety studies, but then studies that show it increases cognitive function and power, look for products that contain alpha GPC. Actually, D-Stunner is one of those products that contains alpha GPC.
That's probably why I like it so much.